Thanks for sticking with me through the ad. Remember, !Prime. I would love your Prime sub if you would give it to me. Remember, you have to renew it every month. It does not renew on its own. If you don't give it to me, please give it to someone else. Please limit your financial support of Twitch until these people are deplatformed. Oh, you'll give it to me, Tape? Will you give it to me hard and fast? You swear you will? Sweet. I'm stoked. Okay, moving on. One more time, !Prime for a little snippet. And please go to the Discord link, join the Discord, and see my full response there. OnlyFans when? Ooh, I'm gonna have to buy a lot more fans if I'm gonna do an OnlyFans. There's so many out there, and they're so expensive. I literally only have one fan, and it's hanging up on my ceiling right now to circulate the AC a little better. Okay, this next thing is very, very cool. It's the I hadn't thought about that, but you're right, Tape. It is the only fan. Yes, I only have one fan. It is the only fan. Okay. I came across this video last night. This is Hank Green, the YouTube famous Hank Green, who dabbles in just about everything, but he's talking about new-ish signs of life from Martian geology. And I say geology because I don't know if it was from a soil sample or from a rock sample or whatever it is. I was kind of watching it last night while doom scrolling, so I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it, but I got kind of the gist of it. So what I'm excited about is to go in and see what he's actually talking about, and then kind of try to keep up with some of the science behind it he's talking about. So let's check this out.
Good morning, John. Don't really feel up to the moment, generally. I don't think anybody's a huge fan of moments where it feels like suddenly everything's possible and that there aren't any good answers and there's no way to sort of access what the future will be like, or even how we got here. So instead, today, I want to talk about life on Mars. And I'm just going to go off the dome here, if you don't mind, though I do have some notes. And I just like, it's possible that with the whole world being what it is right now, you did not hear about this, but NASA announced, and there was a
too many things going on for us to pick up on everything.
Paper out that after a full year of work, Perseverance, the rover, has detected some things on the surface of Mars that we do not know how to explain.
So remember, he said this is after an entire year's worth of work, and he's going to get back to that later on, where findings like these may not be the explosive news story that you think it would be, because it's taken several years, maybe even several decades for scientists to come to a consensus.
Without there having been life on Mars. Now that's very different from saying that there was definitely life on Mars, and very, very different from saying there is currently life on Mars. But to put this all in context and to talk about like how science works, I'm going to give you the past, present, and future of life on Mars, including this recent discovery, which I think could be quite a big deal. The first spacecraft we ever sent to the surface of Mars was in the 1970s, and it carried a little biology lab. So Viking 1 and 2 weren't just there taking pictures, though the pictures were important because, like, look, they did not know if they might see, like, lichen. They knew that Mars was pretty barren. They knew that the atmosphere was very thin. But there was plenty of talk back then about whether the pictures would show life. And there were definitely biology experiments on the Viking landers that were designed to detect life. So this was, from the beginning, taken very seriously. I mean, even before we were on Mars, there was lots of talk about whether there would be little green men. They were not looking for signs of past life. They were looking for currently existing life. They grabbed a little bit of soil and they put like water and nutrients on it to see if metabolism would start. And the first signal from that experiment was that gas was being released. And that was a big moment. But the way that science works, then you do other experiments to see if maybe that could have been done through some normal kind of chemistry, because like situations on the surface of Mars aren't going to be like situations on the surface of Earth. Other experiments.
So that's the important part of science that you have to remember. a big part of the scientific method is making sure that you can reproduce exactly what you witnessed, and then try to do everything you can to debunk that. Because if you can reproduce it, and you can take out all of the other factors that you can think of, and even some that you can't even think of, then you kind of have a real answer there about what the hell's going on. You thought it'd be a Charlie Kirk video? How do we move on to Mars? Today's just a day for me to talk about things that have been on my mind, and this and the next topic are both things I've been thinking about for like at least a week or so.
Experiments on the surface of Mars showed no organic molecules, and then also we showed that the metabolism could be explained just by weird chemistry rather than by life. There could easily be just reactive compounds in the soil that would mimic the signs of life. So the verdict...
Right, and that's stuff you got to test for to make sure that you don't jump to conclusions or publish scientific research that may or may not be true.
Shifted from maybe yes to probably not. Viking was set up kind of with like one big experiment to decide everything, and that's just so rarely how science works. Now, if they had just taken pictures of some moss, that would have been it. Like, it could have it could have played out that way. But usually it's more like you get a lot of drips, you interrogate those drips, you try and like deal with those interrogations, like a criticism. No, maybe it was done like this, and they're like, okay, we'll check for that.
That's exactly what I was talking about.
Measurements, countermeasurements, arguments, contradictions, revisions, science. In 1996, I was 16 years old and I was at summer camp, and another big thing happened. There was this Martian meteorite that was found in Antarctica, ALH 84001. Allen Hills, 84001. And that was a rock from Mars. It had been blasted off the surface of Mars by an impact, and then it had landed in Antarctica, and we grabbed that, and we did science to it, and we looked at it under an electron microscope, and we were like, oh my gosh, this thing looks like a fossil of a bacteria. And that was very big news, and I was very frustrated because I was at camp, and I didn't have my computer, and I couldn't blog about it. So that's where I'm at. Then people were like, look, geology can make bacteria-shaped structures all by itself, and today... this is still like in limbo. Like, it is an unresolved, probably forever a maybe sign that there could have been life. And it's like, to me, it's not even a check in either column. Now, to be fair, I skipped over the first part of this story, which is like looking at Mars and seeing, are these canals? Is this like a sign of an ancient dying civilization? And I'm also going to skip some other stuff. Like, Curiosity discovered some organic molecules in some mudstone. When I say organic, that's the chemistry definition of organic, which does not mean made by life. It means part of the large family of carbon-centered chemistry. We've seen weird spikes in methane on the surface of Mars that turned out to be maybe not as weird as we thought. There's also seasonal recurring lines of like dark stripes, which seems like they could kind of be considered flowing water on the surface of Mars. And also, a huge amount of planetary science just proving that at one point Mars had a bunch of water running over it. Like, we know that now. We didn't know that when I was a kid. But for the sake...
Right, so he made a good point of saying organic doesn't mean life. It means having to do with something that's carbon-based. And that's very important when talking about this, because you have to be extremely pedantic when talking about science. That's why... you know, medicine is typically a 7-year degree, because you have to learn all of these terms for all of the parts of the body and all of the science in medicine that you're going to be dealing with, so that people know what you're talking about when you say something. And it's very important to be extremely specific when talking about this stuff, or your words can get misconstrued. Your papers, your studies, your reports, people can misinterpret, and it's very important that research is interpreted correctly so that people can try to replicate experiments, produce their own results, see if they match the results you got from your study, and then eventually come to a consensus.
Of time, we're going to skip up to 2024. Perseverance rover drilled into a rock in Jezero crater, which is part of a dried up river delta that once fed into a Martian lake. This rock looked exciting, if you're the kind of person who can get excited by Martian rocks, which I am. So first thing to know, this rock was formed in a river delta by mud. So there was mud there, and then over time, you know, the water left and the rock was compressed, and now you have what's there now. And the reason this mudstone was particularly exciting is these spots that are all over it. And outside of the spot, you have one colored rock. Inside the spot, you have a different colored rock, and on the edge of the spot, you have a different color to it. So what is happening, definitely, is that something happens in the middle of that, and it changes the rock as it spreads out. And so that on its own is like,
let me go back to that image. If you look at this, if you've ever spent some time in the woods, I mean, probably almost every kid who's picked up rocks can tell you this. This looks like some kind of sedimentary rock where there are different minerals contained in this rock, and it's just been compressed and heated over time to form into one thing. So I've seen hundreds and hundreds of rocks in my lifetime that resemble something like this. You know what else it looks like, though? It looks like a skin rash where you have a bacterial infection, which are the white parts, and then you have your body fighting that infection, which are the dark rings around the white spots. And then you have the rest of the red, which is the inflammation. Moldy cheese. Yeah, it also looks like moldy cheese. So, could this be just a sedimentary rock containing many different minerals? Could it be from a extraterrestrial bacteria? Extraterrestrial meaning not from Earth, because obviously this is a Mars rock.
To it. So what is happening, definitely, is that something happens in the middle of that, and it changes the rock as it spreads out. And so that on its own is like, that's something you should look at more. And so they did, and Perseverance is a much more complex and capable laboratory than the Viking landers ever could dream of being. And they can look and check specifically what kinds of molecules are in there. And they can see first there's some organic compounds, which again doesn't mean life, it means carbon-based. But they also found these two kinds of molecules. So there's vivianite, which is iron phosphate, and there's gregite. I think it's pronounced gregite. It's named after a guy whose last name was Greg. Spelled like this. So what this paper is talking about is that in this mudstone, so this like silt and clay that turned into stone, there's iron.
In terms of life on other planets, there is limits to science, and that limit is theoretical physics, and even theoretical physics barely support faster than light travel. So the question of alien life is kind of inconsequential if we can barely communicate with each other. Yes, but only from the perspective of humanity. Faster than light travel may not be possible based on the physics that humans understand, but there are many things that we don't know about the universe. We have witnessed the effects. We haven't witnessed the actual thing, but we have witnessed the effects of things we're calling dark energy. There are things we've witnessed the effects of that we're calling dark matter. We don't know what those are. We don't know how they work. We are just starting to try to understand how black holes work. There are theories that our universe is inside of a black hole, and each black hole is its own universe. There is a theory that black holes are actually wormholes, and that the popular scientific model of a black hole, when you reach the what's it called, the event horizon, we largely understand it that as we approach the event horizon, time slows down to a point where time will stop for an outside observer. So you go towards you yourself go towards a black hole, and you cross that event horizon. as you are approaching the event horizon, somebody not you that is watching you do it will see you slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down until you get to the event horizon, and then the other observer will watch you stop, and to them, you will never cross the event horizon. Now, at the same time, what we theorize is happening to you is as you approach that event horizon, the difference in gravity between the part that's of you that's closest to the event horizon or the black hole and the part of you that is further away from it has such an immense difference in gravity that what begins to happen is spaghettification. You're literally stretched out from the difference in gravitational forces. But recently, there's been some theories that suggest that you can actually pass the event horizon, go into a black hole, and it's actually a wormhole, and you can end up somewhere else in the universe by way of wormholes bending space so that faster than light travel is not required to travel immense numbers of light years. You thought about in terms of Kardashev scale, and there has been no sign of a +2 Kardashev scale civilization colonize their solar system where it should have left sign. Right, so that's, I forget, there's a paradox that kind of deals with that, and it talks about how if there is other life in the universe, then we would assume that there is life more advanced than us. And if that is so, why haven't we seen it yet? And one of the answers to that paradox is maybe we are the most advanced, or maybe we are the only life in the in the universe, or we are the most advanced civilization in the universe. So, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. It could be either one of those things. None of that science is settled yet. It's very, very much in it's not even to its infancy yet. It's like, in terms of baby, it is still fetus. It's very, very, very young science.
Iron and sulfur. And in this universe, things that are at a higher energy can release energy and go to the lower energy.
Let's back up a little bit because I forgot what he was talking about.
Spelled like this. So what this paper is talking about is that in this mudstone, so this like silt and clay that turned into stone, there's iron and sulfur. And in this universe, things that are at a higher energy can release energy and go to the lower energy. It's just like dropping a ball. But these iron and sulfur compounds
like
are like in a stable high energy state. So think of a ball that's like up here, but in a well, so that it's never gonna get out of there unless you like bump it out. Like you gotta shake it up. Iron, its energy level is up here.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the stream. I'm getting some frame droppage. Hopefully it settles out soon.
Here, and it's not going anywhere, right? Even if there's quite a bit of heat, it's not going anywhere. There's no way to get the iron out until there's like a lot of heat, and then the iron goes flying out, and it's not in there anymore.
Hold on. Let's wait for the stream to settle itself out here. Okay, I think we're back. I don't know what's going on. I think I think it's less to do with my ISP. Well, I think it's some of it to do with the Cox cable. I think it has more to do with the shitty equipment that I'm renting from them. So I rent my modem router combo from them, and they're not built well. They charge $5 a month for rent for it. There's no way it's going to be great. And the only reason I have that is because I haven't spent $600 to get a modem and router of my own that is high quality. Plus, if I rent and something happens with the equipment, I can just go get a replacement for free, which I have done. I think last year I went through 5. I'm on my second one this year already. I might have to go switch this one out. Part of it also is bandwidth congestion in the area that I live. Big population, lots of people, limited bandwidth. They just keep giving me the last one I turned back in. I know. Wouldn't that be the kicker? Okay. Back to the science. We're talking about Greg.
Anymore, and it falls down. And that can absolutely happen
let's back up a little bit, because I don't know about you, but I don't entirely remember what he was talking about.
Landers ever could dream of being. And they can look and check specifically what kinds of molecules are in there. And they can see first there's organic compounds, which again doesn't mean life, it means carbon-based. But they also found these two kinds of molecules. So there's vivianite, which is iron phosphate, and there's gregite. I think it's pronounced gregite. It's named after a guy whose last name was Greg, spelled like this. So what this paper is talking about is that in this mudstone, so this like silt and clay that turned into stone, there's iron and sulfur. And in this universe,
which could just be sedimentary rock formed by compiling sediments that are then transformed into one geological entity through pressure and heat.
Things that are at a higher energy can release energy and go to the lower energy. It's just like dropping a ball. But these iron and sulfur compounds are like in a stable high energy state. So think of a ball that's like up here, but in a well, so that it's never gonna get out of there unless you like bump it out. Like you gotta shake it up. Iron, its energy level is up here and it's not going anywhere, right? Even if there's quite a bit of heat, it's not going anywhere. There's no way to get the iron out until there's like a lot of heat, and then the iron goes flying out and it's not in there anymore and it falls down. And that can absolutely happen without biology. But you need heat. And heat is the thing that's shaking the cup. It's getting the iron out and then to a lower energy state. And what
right, the heat is what adds energy to matter.
Has happened inside of these spots is that the sulfur and the iron seem to have spontaneously jumped out of the cup. So you have to ask, how did they get out of the cup? How did they get out of their very stable but higher energy configuration to a second stable lower energy spot? They check and they look, and everything else about this environment says this was not a hot place. The chemicals also didn't like form somewhere else and then get deposited there. These chemicals formed where they are. I mean, you can tell that just by looking at it. They're not mixed in. It's like something happened and it spread out. Now, the thing is, when the iron falls out, that creates energy, and that energy can be released in a number of different ways, but it can also be captured by life. So here on Earth, there are microbes that do this. They take compounds that are in high energy but stable states, and they say, okay, well, I'm going to use the chemistry of life to get you out of that state, and then I'm going to use that energy as it falls down to the lower energy state to power my metabolism. And this happens on Earth with both iron and with sulfur, which is what we're seeing here. So like
another analogy you can make, it's not exactly the same, but if you think of those phosphates in the iron, it's kind of, he's talking about something similar to like photosynthesis, where like plankton in the ocean and trees, like tree leaves and stuff that uses chlorophyll will take the photons from the sun and convert that to energy. It's a similar process that he's talking about, just not with sunlight. He's talking about with iron and whatever other phosphate he mentioned.
Is a bacteria on Earth that captures iron reduction to power its metabolism. There are also on Earth sulfate reducing bacteria that capture that happening with sulfur. This is called chemosynthesis. So it's like photosynthesis, where you are like running your metabolism instead of with light, you're running your metabolism with chemistry. And so the question is, did we definitely find these compounds? And it seems like we did. Are there corresponding organic molecules around that could have been part of a living system? And yes, there is. Could it have been super hot and the chemistry have happened that way? And the answer is definitely not. Or could this chemistry have happened some other third way that we don't know about? And the answer to that is maybe. So that, to me, as a person who
a lot of variables
knows the basics of biochemistry, is super exciting. Like, that's all right. Okay, we should look into that. But look, again, the chemistry of Mars is different from the chemistry of Earth. We don't know what it was like back then. But if we were on Mars, or if these rocks were on Earth, we could totally figure this out. Like, this would actually not be that hard to figure out whether or not this was done through regular old chemistry or biological chemistry. So now we're going to move on into the near future. What would we do to these specific rocks to figure out if there was life? So life on Earth makes like four big macromolecules. You got DNA, you got proteins, you got carbohydrates, and you got lipids. DNA.
This is when I'm not on stream and I'm not at work. This is the stuff I'm watching. Like I'm a super nerd, like nerd, dork, all of it. I love this stuff.
Not probably going to be super helpful when we're talking billions of years ago. It breaks down super fast. Proteins fall apart pretty fast, though there's a chance that some of the individual amino acids would get stuck in amongst the mudstone, and we could find them, but amino acids.
So that's really interesting that he brings up that proteins fall apart very quickly, because heat is one of the most damaging things to a protein. I'm pretty sure this is true, but I think most proteins will break down under a heat under heat that is at a much lower temperature than you would imagine. So proteins are theorized to not be able to survive the open vacuum of space, and that's why finding evidence of bacteria is so important, because bacterias typically have a low amount of proteins, and they have more, well, I mean, they're single-celled organisms, so they don't have a protein. They're just a cell or a group of single cell organisms.
Acids can be created through non-biological processes, so we would have to find that there was like a preference toward a handedness to those amino acids. So amino acids can be sort of like left-handed or right-handed. You see how like my hands don't line up perfectly, even though they're mirror images of each other. So there could be mirror images of amino acids, and life only uses one of those mirror images on Earth. And probably that would be the case everywhere. It wouldn't be the same mirror that would be used. They would either choose left hand or right hand, but they wouldn't do both. And so if there wasn't a 50-50 mix of the handedness of the amino acids, that would be basically a smoking gun. I would say that was life. But over that vast quantity of time, the handedness might actually be lost. So this might not be the smoking gun. Next, lipids. They're tougher. And so we could probably find lipids. This would not quite be a smoke.
So I wonder if that right hand and left-handedness of the amino acids has anything to do with the theories of which compounds life can be based on. So like here on Earth, life is almost exclusively based on a carbon model of life. Now, there are some implications and theories that life could also have a sulfur based, because carbon and sulfur are so close together in their molecular makeup. They're very close to each other on the periodic table, and they mimic a lot of the same characteristics that could facilitate life. Or it's theorized that sulfur could have life based on it, similar to how carbon is.
Smoking gun. Now, if it was certain like sizes,
I don't know if that's what he means by left and right-handedness of amino acids, but I'm wondering if that is kind of what he's alluding to.
And this is like cell membrane stuff, then that would be like, whoa, okay, that's a pretty big hint. But lipids can actually stand up for a long time. We have found lipid remnants in rocks 2 billion years old on Earth. But here's the big one, isotopes. So carbon specifically occurs naturally as carbon-12, which has 6 protons and 6 neutrons, but also carbon-13 and other isotopes. And carbon-13 has 6 protons and 7 neutrons. Life prefers lighter isotopes. So if you took all the carbon out of my body, I would be dead, and so I wouldn't be able to talk to you anymore, but you have a pile of carbon. And then if you took all the carbon out of a bunch of pencils, you laid them next to each other, there would be more carbon-13 in the same number of pencil atoms than there would be in my atoms. We know this. We've known this forever. It's an extraordinarily useful quirk of physics. Life prefers the lighter isotopes, and so if you want to figure out if something was living or not,
deep into
you can look at the carbon ratios, and you could determine for sure whether it was alive. So this is probably going to be how we do it, and it's not complicated science. I mean, it's getting the stuff to Earth, very complicated. The science itself, of course, complicated, but not something that's new or that would be difficult to do. And this is the kind of evidence that Earth's earliest life rests on. We do isotopic fractionations of stuff that's frozen into 3.5 billion year old rocks in Australia and South Africa, which are like the oldest rocks on Earth, because Earth, this is going to become important later, is very geologically active, constantly recycling rocks. So we don't have like many of the rocks from the early Earth to work with. Mars, not like that. But to get the samples back from Mars, you have to do the sample return mission. And this...
If I take my pants off, you're clipping it? Bro, I don't have pants on. I got shorts on. I'll put photos next to my OnlyFan. Oh, hi Bob. What are you doing? Icky has come to say hello.
Perseverance was designed for this. It can package up samples from Mars. It's been doing this. It like leaves them behind, and they're there to get picked up and brought back by
Space
a
litter.
robot, not by a person. And that mission has not launched yet. It's been somewhat fraught in getting it done, in getting it funded. It's a complicated mission, and at the moment, it's a little bit in limbo. Definitely not going to happen in the 2020s. It will hopefully happen in the 2030s, which will be...
Icky's not still sleeping on his bed. Either that camera's frozen or it has like a 3-minute delay. Hold on, let me see if I can refresh it real quick. Sometimes I just have to go into the settings and just hit OK again. There we go.
Great, because I will theoretically still be alive then. But again, this is what science looks like. So we have all these little puzzle pieces. We're getting more and more puzzle pieces all the time, but only when we actually do the science. They don't just come in. We actually have to
it's like
do
magic tape.
Hard, clever science. And those clues pile up. And some fall apart under scrutiny. Others are scrutinized and they continue to gain strength as they don't fall apart under scrutiny. If the
He's literally standing just out of frame of the dog camera, just looking at me with like the saddest look on his face. I don't know what he's doing. He's been doing that lately though.
leopard spots in this rock are really biosignatures. Mars was inhabited by life. But here's the thing, the moment you accept that,
hold on,
you don't get closure.
Let's back up.
Some fall. They have to do hard, clever science. And those clues pile up, and some fall apart under scrutiny. Others are scrutinized and they continue to gain strength as they don't fall apart under scrutiny. If the leopard spots in this rock are really biosignatures, Mars was inhabited by life. But here's the thing, the moment you accept that, you don't get closure, you get new mysteries. For example, did life start independently on Mars, writing its own version of biochemistry as we did ours? And that would, for me, be the most exciting version of this story. That would basically mean life is extraordinarily common in the universe. It wouldn't necessarily mean complex life is common in the universe, but it would mean life is common in the universe. If it happened twice in one solar system on two neighboring planets, it happens all the time. And we could probably tell if it did its own version of biochemistry, or in the other direction, if there was one single origin that ended up on two different planets, which would also be very interesting and important. So we know that planets are swapping parts through impact ejecta. We know that some things can survive in space for fairly long periods of time. So it might be that life started on Earth and then was transported to Mars, or it might be that life started on Mars and was transported to Earth, or it might be that life started somewhere else and was transported to both places. But which that would be extra wild. And also, I don't.
Or there's still what he said about convergent evolution. So like the idea that life happened on Earth and Mars independently of each other.
I don't think there'd be any way to tell the difference between any of those circumstances. But maybe. But also, if there was life on Mars, this opens up something I don't think people talk about that much. The earliest evidence we have of life on Earth is about 3.5 billion years old, but that's not because it probably was the oldest life, just because that's the oldest rocks we have. If there's a definite biosignature on Mars, that would, one, prove that we are not the only planet with life on it, but it might also give us access to the earliest evolutionary steps that has already been erased by Earth. So we don't have a way of looking back in the past that far. Living chemistry of Mars would allow us to have access, potentially, to information that would help us understand how chemistry became biology, which is one of the very biggest questions. And finally, if we're really talking about the future of life on Mars, the most exciting, maybe even unsettling question is if Mars hosted life for a long period of time, is it still there? We know that Mars has heat inside of it still. Like the most recent volcanic eruption on Mars was not billions of years ago. It was millions or even maybe less than that of years ago. So we know there's still heat in there. We know that there was once water. We know that we are pretty sure that there is still subsurface water. If that subsurface water is near something warm and there was once life on Mars, then that life, it seems entirely possible, especially given what we know about sort of deep down life on Earth, that there would still be living microbes in, if not on, Mars. And that would allow us to observe it directly which would be, I don't know, like that would, oh God, that would be so cool and good. But also, we'd have to make sure that we don't kill it. That would suck. If we killed the life on Mars,
we're not good at that. I don't know if we could stop that.
Another thing to extinct a biosphere by introducing all of our advanced stuff that's had a bunch of time to thrive and evolve. Like ultimate invasive species, right? Like moving into Mars and be like, oh, whole planet to go after, give me it. I'm talking about microbes being the invasive species here, not humans, though. Ultimate invasive species right here. We can invade anywhere.
Right, Tape. So that's another thing we have to be conscious about. So in this case, there's no way we could have done that, but we definitely have to be careful about contaminating extraterrestrial geology, planets or whatever else is out there, with organisms from Earth. And that's something that the scientific labs here studying this stuff is very, very conscious of. So it's a big hurdle in doing the research about this stuff.
Antarctica. We went to the moon. So yeah, isotopic fingerprints of carbon-based chemistry, lipid backbones, maybe locked up in the clay, maybe even, I didn't talk about this, microfossil like type stuff like the Allen Hills meteorite. That's how you sort of build the picture, like one, that there was life, and two, what was that life like? The questions don't stop coming. This is one of those big questions that becomes a trillion questions once it gets answered. If it gets answered in the positive, this one question becomes a trillion questions, and like a trillion very exciting questions. But I think it's important to say that the way that this is happening is reflective of almost every big scientific claim turning into consensus. So you get the early hint, you get contradictory data, you get tantalizing maybes, you get years of debate, and then you finally settle that debate. My favorite example of this is like, when were atoms discovered? Like, was it when Democritus said, I think there are atoms, and I'm gonna have a philosophical debate about that? Was it when Dalton and Lavoisier were like, look, we're doing all this chemistry, and it's all happening in whole number increments, and that seems weird. So probably stuff exists in discrete units, like atoms. But maybe it wasn't then. Maybe it was when Einstein...
There's in chat is a link to this video. He goes on about some more stuff, like for another 3.5 minutes. So go check out the video if you want to see the rest of it or review it, go over what he wants. I like this one, man. I really, I want to believe so bad. I want to believe so bad that there is life on other planets. What I would really like to believe is that there are life on other planets that evolved outside of Earth, contemporary evolution. I said it earlier, I forget the word I used. The idea that life could evolve at the same time, convergent evolution. That's what I was thinking of. I want to believe that life can be extremely common to the point where it can happen in multiple places at the same time without having communicated or affected each other. That would be like my ultimate, like, yeah, there are fucking aliens out there and we're not alone, and maybe some of them have surpassed us technologically, or they're made up of a different substance that allows them to be so different from us that they don't have the problems that the human race has. In an infinite universe, anything is possible, right? Sure. And then you have to go into the theory of multiverse, where, you know, there can be multiple universes at the same time, which kind of gets into string theory and back to what I was talking about black holes earlier, where there is a theory gaining traction that each black hole is its own universe, and our universe is inside a black hole, which means there's universeception. So you have universes within black holes, within universes, within black holes, within universes. It's fucking crazy, dude. Holy smokes. Okay, go check out the video. Hank Green and his brother John Green are really cool. They've been on YouTube forever. If you don't know about them, you've been living under a rock. It's just universes all the way down. Yep. Just bam, 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 bam. Maybe Men in Black was right. And you can have a little universe in a pendant that you can put on your cat's collar. And you can have your own little personal universe you can be the god of. Don't do that. You can have the universe, but don't play God. Okay, we're gonna go on ad break, and then we'll get into the last thing, the last video I want to go over with you guys, because this is a very, very long one, and it's so cool. This is like ancient civilization stuff that I'm like super into. So, yeah, I'm excited. Okay, I'll see you after the ads. Okay.